The Powers Project.
Hi, Cari, how are you this morning?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Kurt. I feel honored to be here and to be giving a little bit of value to your community today. It's going to be fun.
Fun, and I'm looking forward to getting a little value from this as well because I want the answers that you have on how to take an hour out of the day and make your business grow. And I want to see how you do that because that seems like one of those things that's too good to be true. But I know that people say, look, if you manage your time properly, that's possible. So that's why I want to have you on the show today, because I think the information you have is going to be very valuable to my audience, but to me as well. So I'm
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. Like, this is what I live for. I'm so passionate about entrepreneurship, and not just entrepreneurship, but digital entrepreneurship, helping that digital entrepreneur make more money in less time by focusing on the things that are going to actually drive that revenue. So
looking
I could talk for hours on this, Kurt.
see what we can do in a couple then. So you wrote a book and it's called You've Got This Girl: Overcoming Obstacles, Smashing Goals, and Creating an Abundant Life. So the first silly question I have to ask you, does this work for men too then?
Absolutely. Absolutely doesn't. It's funny because when I wrote the book, um, I had probably 10 men right away. The second they got the title, they're all like, I can read this too, right? And so while I was promoting the book and while I was doing that, I always had to say, this is for men too. It's for the digital entrepreneur as a whole. The reason that I called it You Got This Girl is because that was like my mantra, almost like the thing that kept me going when, you know, my house is a mess and life is out of balance and my baby is eating Cheerios off the floor because I just got to get one more thing done, right? So that was kind of my mantra. And so that's the whole reason I called the book You Got This Girl, because I don't know how many times per day I whisper to myself, like right before I'm about to explode, it's like, you got this, you can do this, let's simmer down, right? And so, yes, to answer your question, man, woman, anybody can read this book and they can get value from it. So
Basically, that was just positive self-talk you were giving yourself in that sort of title. I think that's a great tool. I
absolutely.
mean, considering that
Mhm.
you actually use that phrase quite often, apparently. So
Yeah, I do. And it's funny because I never realized I did it so much until I had a student that actually said, you always say you got this, girl. Like, like on my when I was on my coaching calls or whatever, if it was a man, I was like, you got this. They're like, that's kind of your catchphrase is you got this. And I'm like, I never realized it before. And then I was like, I say it to myself probably 5 times a day. Like, you've got this, you can do this. Anytime I'm like scared out of my mind, right before we go live on a podcast, it's like, you got this, you can do this, all is well.
you have children. I would say it a dozen times at least just because of that. Because
Exactly. Exactly. Trying to grow a business from home with 3 small children. You have to
right.
have a mantra to keep yourself sane.
Exactly. So what got you into this business? Like how did you come to become this I know you don't call yourself a guru, but basically, this person who shows other people how to build their business online. How did you get to this point?
That's a great question. So I like to think that I was built to be an entrepreneur. So by the time when my husband and I first got married, by the time I was 24, we were married really young, by the way, from a small little town in Utah. It's the culture, right? I was married at 19. I actually met him when I was 18. And so by the time I was 22, 23, like I had been through probably a dozen different jobs and I knew everything that I didn't want to do, but I didn't really know what I did want to do. And so around here, like when women don't want to work for someone else, they open a salon, right? And so I went to beauty school. I was like, okay, I'm going to open my salon. That's going to give me time. I'm going to be able to be home with my kids, because that was a big thing for me. Was I wanted to be that. I wanted to be able to bring in some money, right? Help support the family, but I didn't want to do it at the expense of like having to put my kids in daycare. Not that there's anything wrong. That just wasn't what I wanted, right? I wanted to be there for every milestone. I wanted to be the one that raised my children. I wanted to be present in their lives. And so when I opened this salon. It went great for the first little while. So that you know a little bit about where we live. So we live in a really, like I said before, really teeny small town in the middle of Utah. There are more cows here than people. And our community, it pretty much runs off of, you either work at the prison. We have a prison here in about 15 minutes east of me. You work at the coal mine, or you drive truck. Those are like pretty much the three major things that people do working here. And when those things are good, right? When the economy is good and those things are booming, things around here are good and things are booming, and things like owning a nail salon is great. But when those certain things are not booming and people are worried about losing jobs, people are being laid off, it gets pretty desperate pretty quickly. And that's exactly what happened. So I opened my own nail salon. It would have been about 13, 14 years ago. It was when I did that. And I loved it until I didn't love it. And I don't know how many people on here are watching and like, you think that you want to do something and then you get started and you're like, maybe this isn't for me after all. And that's exactly what happened. And I remember the day that it happened. So my son, he's 8 now. I was sitting across from, he was just barely born. He was about 6 months old. I was sitting across from a lady. I was doing her nails, filing away, and he was crying because he was hungry. You know, was kind of booked back to back during the day. And so I was running behind and he was starving. And I remember like having like that panic of like, I've got to feed my baby, right? And the lady that was sitting across from me in the chair, she's all like, you better hurry and finish my nails so you can feed him. And I remember that was like my moment of like, I'm not a business owner. Like my business owns me, right? Like I went from hating having a boss, being in a 9 to 5, to putting myself in handcuffs almost, because my salon ran me. If there was not someone across from me in the chair, I did not make money. And it was and sometimes it was at the expense of my children. And that's when it was like, this is not what I want to do. Very shortly after this happened, my husband ended up being laid off from one of his jobs. It was the second time he was laid off in our marriage. And then I ended up, because of several layoffs that happened in the area, my nail clientele was cut in half within a couple weeks. And so we went from making a really good living to suddenly being desperate really quick. And the nail salon wasn't cutting it. And so it was shortly after that I got my start in network marketing, believe it or not. And I'm going to tell you right now, Kurt, I was one of those anti-network marketing. Like people had approached us so many times because, I mean, we have a lot of friends, right? Like we're outgoing people. I mean, we have a lot of people that, you know, I guess we know, let's put it that way. And so I thought we were going to do really well. I had always said no, like I'm not going to do network marketing until I was in that desperate situation of, oh, I've got to do network marketing. And I found out very quickly that I did not have influence. I had a lot of friends, but I did not have any influence over those friends. And I got a lot of, great, I'm so excited for you. Let me know how it goes, because it's
right.
Marketing, right?
Exactly. You know, let me tell you something. I've noticed that in network marketing, the ones who are the most successful are people from Utah. I don't know why that is.
Kurt, we are the network marketing capital of the world. Like you drive down I-15 and there are it's like you look to the left, to the right, and it's just network marketing company, network marketing company, network marketing company, network marketing company. And I do have a theory on this. Believe it or not, I have a theory on the reason Utah is this way. So first off, we have a lot because of the Mormon culture, right? The Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints is what they are now, but Mormons, right? Like when you look at Mormons, a lot of women want to stay home with their children. It's just the culture of the state. But in staying home with their children, they want to be able to make extra money. And so a lot of companies are here for that reason. The second thing, because of the Mormon culture, you have a lot of missionaries that have gone out for 2 years and preached, you know, Mormonism to people all over the world. They've had doors slammed in their face. They've been told no more times than you can count. So when they get home, they're already like ready, right? Like they're like, but primed to do network marketing because they're going to be told no so many times. And so I'm like, of course, Utah's the network marketing capital, right? we've got the perfect setup for that. But on the flip side, there's a lot of people with a bitter taste of network marketing in their mouth because it's the network marketing capital of the world. Everybody in Utah has been hit up by a network marketing company at least once. And that was me, like several that had happened. And I was bitter, not because of my own experience, but because of my parents' experience growing up. My dad had gotten started in a couple of different companies, and by no fault of his own, it didn't work out. My dad, he's actually a very successful insurance salesman, life insurance salesman here in Utah. I mean, at one point he had won presidents of the President's Club for the entire.
Okay, and we're back after a little technical difficulty there. I'm not quite sure what it was, but I know it wasn't Cari and it wasn't me, so it wasn't our fault. So.
Technology, tech gremlins
exactly.
is what we call them.
So I was going to ask you the question that unlike network marketing companies from the past, like Amway and what's the one out in Utah that's the vitamin one?
There are a lot of vitamin ones out here, but really you're thinking like New Skin or something like that.
That's it, because New Skin's been around forever.
Yeah.
These new MLMs that come out, that pop up out of everywhere, seem to not remain the company they are in the beginning. So they either sell or they just change their own plan and their own programs. And so, you work your butt off to get into these, and to make money. And then all of a sudden they change it on you, the compensation program. And it's like, how do you do that? Like legally, how can you do that? And doesn't that leave a bad taste in people's mouths where they go, yeah, I'm not doing anything with MLMs because of that?
Yeah. So I can speak to this because it happened to my dad, right? I was just talking to you about how it happened to my dad. By no fault of my dad's own, he went from making really good money to making no money. So when it comes to network marketing, what I've personally found, because I struggled in the very beginning, but by learning a few things, I actually was able to build success in a network marketing business, believe it or not. I found that not all companies are created equal, and where a lot of people end up, I don't want to say necessarily, like going wrong, or I guess setting themselves up for failure, we'll put it that way, is they aren't treating their business like a business. They go to friends and family and they bug them, right? And I mean, I'm all about like telling people what you're doing and like letting them know. And if they want to join you, great. But how about if you're going to be in network marketing, how about you run your business like a business, right? We know, if you take a look at really any business that's out there, they don't just become rich off of their friends and family, right? Like they know how they have a steady flow of leads that are constantly coming in. They're able to predict their own revenue because of certain KPIs that they're going to hit. They don't just build their business off of a wish and a prayer. The second thing is, a lot of people, when they come in, they think that it's all about the company. They drink the Kool-Aid, if it's kind of what I like to say, is they drink the Kool-Aid of whatever company that they're with. And they think that company is the best company that's around, that there's no other good companies out there. And because of that, they focus so heavily on like sell, that nobody wants to join, right? Instead of, how about we build a brand around something? It could be you, it's just value based, right? Like I call it influence marketing. Like, how do you provide value to people so that they get to know, like, and trust you first? And then on the back end, you can promote whatever it is that you have, whether it's a network marketing company, or it could be anything at that point, right? Like it could be like your podcast, for instance. It could be anything. Like, let's just take network marketing out of it because it works the same for any business that's out there. Let's provide value first, build a list of people that are actually interested in what we have to offer, and let's go take our products and services to those people. When you grow your business like a business, instead of just hoping and praying and, hoping that people are going to join you and reaching out to everybody that you know on social media and sending, spammy messages to people, which happens a lot with these network marketing companies that are out there. Let's treat people how to grow a business like a business, and then more people will have success.
Okay. So great points. So most people are going to say, okay, Cari, how do we do that? Like, for instance, let's take network marketing out of this. Let's bring my podcast into this.
Okay, awesome. We can do this.
So let's say, because and I'm sure this is the biggest challenge for any business, is how do you find those people? How do you reach those people? Like, I know, Instagram, all the, the things that you're told to do with Facebook, Instagram, and all that stuff. And yet what I've found, at least with podcasting, is that it's like entrepreneurs. I do not believe everyone's born to be an entrepreneur. I don't think everyone can do it. I think it's a special type of people who just a glutton for punishment, maybe. I don't know. But it takes a certain type of person, and because it's just, I have my best friend. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. Even when I was a little kid, I used to be the kid that would go to school and sell little Debbie's that I bought for 50 cents for a bag of a box of 6 and sell them.
I used to sell candy. So there was certain candy that when we moved down into this little teeny town, I was 12 at the time. And there was a candy called Scorchers. I don't know if you remember Scorchers.
I've heard of it, but I don't.
So do you remember I don't remember what they're called. They were sour, like they were little sour things, and you put them in your mouth, and they were a warhead.
Oh, okay.
Warhead.
Yes.
Remember warhead?
Yep.
So they were like a warhead, but they were hot. And I remember no one had them around here. And I had this huge box of Scorchers. I went to school and I made so much money selling Scorchers because I was the only one that had them.
Exactly. And see,
I feel like that right there, Kurt. We were born to be entrepreneurs.
That's what people do. Like, entrepreneurs find an opportunity to make money in any place that they are at any time. I was in the Army, and I realized real quick that the guys who were overweight weren't allowed to buy candy or anything like that in the PX when they would go, when you were allowed to go in there to shop. We would all go in as a platoon and come out as a platoon. And so the sergeant would look through the guys who were overweight, look through their bags, make sure they didn't have any candy or anything. So at night, when they're hungry, I would have a candy bar. Go, who would like to buy this candy bar? And I would have these guys who couldn't eat, who couldn't buy it, bidding on my candy bar. Where I'm getting $5 for a candy bar that I paid 50 cents for. It's like, and so yeah, it's just like you find opportunities because that's how you think. And I find that most people don't think that way. So
most people do not, right? And and that's the thing. I think a lot of people. A lot of people, they have that desire, like, to make money a different way. But if you don't learn how to think like an entrepreneur,
right,
you won't be able to be that entrepreneur, right? Like you said, it takes a different type of thinking for someone to really make it big in any industry, right? And I mean, just like it takes a certain type of person to be a professional athlete. It's a certain type of person, to any industry that you look at. There's always a top 1%, right? There's always a top 1% in any industry. I don't think that you necessarily have to be born an entrepreneur. I do believe that you can be taught to be an entrepreneur, but you have to understand that you have to think like an entrepreneur.
Right.
And it's learning how to think that way.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll go with that, but I'm not sure I completely agree with that, because I think you have to have the spirit of an entrepreneur. Because here's the thing that I've discovered, that what makes people successful from those who aren't successful is that no matter what you do, you have to be consistent. And
absolutely,
consistency is everything. No matter whether you're going to be, a multimillionaire from building your business, or whether you're going to be a professional athlete, there's certain things you have to do consistently to become good at, so that you can reach your goals and achieve your objectives. I think entrepreneurs are able to see the payoff at the end, and they never lose focus on that. They believe that payoff is going to be there. And I think people who aren't entrepreneurs want to be, but just aren't. I think they lose sight of that, and then they start doubting themselves and going, yeah, if I put all this work in and then there isn't a payoff at the end, and I wasted all this time, and they start talking themselves out of why they should continue doing what they had set out to do. And
So I think that's great. I think that's a great point. One other thing I want to bring into this, because right, I don't think that there's any right or wrong, right? I actually
right,
love that we kind of agree, but kind of disagree on this, because I know, and so because that's what podcasting is about, right? It's the value that we're giving to your audience. I want people who are listening to like think, does someone have to be born an entrepreneur with that entrepreneur spirit in order to be an entrepreneur? I think that that's great. So the reason that I say I want to like twist that just a little bit is because I have worked with so many moms that they want their husband retired, or they want, they have an end in mind, right? Like, what is that end in mind? And because their desire, because that purpose that they have is so deep, they're willing to learn. They're willing to apply themselves differently.
right,
They hit almost what I like to say. They don't necessarily hit a rock bottom. Some do, and some women that I've worked with, they have hit that rock bottom. And not just moms. There are a couple men that I've worked with as well that they've hit that rock bottom, and they're willing to change. They're willing to think. They're willing to think differently, because there are pieces of entrepreneurship there are certain things that us entrepreneurs, when we hate to do them, we're willing to put in the work and do them until we can hire somebody else to do it for us.
Right, exactly.
Right. And so that's the reason that I say, I kind of think that you don't necessarily have to be born with it, but something in your life has to happen to spark it.
So how about we come to a compromise and say that you need the mindset, but you can get the desire. Like if you have the desire, you can put the mindset with the desire.
Absolutely.
So you can,
Yep.
all right,
Compromise.
I concede you win. You
Well, here's the thing, because I used to think that way, that, oh, you have to be born an entrepreneur.
right,
But when I see because so I've spent a lot of time in human psychology, and it really like how people think, what gets people like to move. And if you can understand how a person thinks, and you can give them processes of thinking, people can learn to think differently. They really can. And it's by I mean, mindset is a way to call it. Mind models is another thing. Some of my own mentors, that's what they call them, is how do you put a system and process of thinking into place? Because when you can teach someone to think like an entrepreneur, and you can teach them how to evaluate their business so that they know whether what they're doing is working or not, at that point, you hire the people to do the stuff.
right.
It's a difference between being a business owner and actually working in the business and doing those certain things.
Exactly. So just like entrepreneurs, to me, what I see in the podcasting world is there are people who listen to podcasts and people who don't listen to podcasts. Like they have no desire to listen to podcasts. What I've discovered is that the people I've noticed who listen to podcasts are either looking to learn or to be entertained, or both, and it's usually both. Right.
That's what I like to call it. Yeah.
So when so I do my podcast, and I have a podcast that I like to say it's very much like Joe Rogan's podcast, in the sense that I touch on every topic out there. I have all types of guests from all walks of life, and I deal with everything from comedy to sports to politics to religion to everything. Nothing's off the table. We'll talk about it. And to be honest with you, I've said many times, I said I've had guests on my show that I go, that was a Joe Rogan quality show. And I go, the only way my show could get any better is if I get better, because the guests I have are wonderful. Like, you're a wonderful guest, and you have so much information that, I want to make sure people reach that. So in order to do that, I need to grow my audience. Now that's
Yeah.
the frustrating part, because going through Facebook and Instagram, if these people aren't already people who listen to podcasts, no matter what I do, they're just going to, gloss over it or pass by it. It's funny because when I look at the analytics and I look at, who's listening to my podcast, there's no rhyme or reason to it for me. Like, I had so many people from South Africa listening to my podcast this month. I go, why? Like, why South Africa? And what happened that, that all of a sudden we're just getting an influx of listeners from South Africa, or from, Australia, or, like Norway. Like, who found me in Norway? And so when you don't know how to read that, you go, how do I garner, these people and grow it from that?
So that's a really great question. And so one thing that I want to put in, and it's actually something that I talk about in my book, is you're comparing yourself to Joe Rogan, right?
Not
And
really, because I know that he's been around forever. And I also see, here's the difference.
right.
I know Joe Rogan was very, he was a celebrity before he did his podcast.
There you go.
And
Yeah, there you go. So you can't compare apples to apples. And
right.
for the listeners that are out there, when you're taking a look at some of these people that are highly successful, you don't compare yourself to them in the very beginning. In my book, I actually use an analogy of when I first started going to the gym and lifting weights. In my book, that's what I talk about. And because I walked in and I had never done weights before. I was a cardio junkie, right? Like I'd hop on the treadmill and that was what I did. But it got to a point when I hit, when I got into my upper 20s, starting to approach 30, that didn't do it for me anymore after having 2 kids. And my husband was the one that was like, you should try lifting weights. And I remember walking into that gym the very first time and thinking, I don't know if I belong here. Right? Like, I'm taking a look at all of these people that are around me. They've been going to the gym for years. They were like shredded, right? Like, I'm sitting here with my 5-pound dumbbells and looking like SpongeBob SquarePants, right? My muscles are actually in a U instead of getting bigger. And I'm comparing myself to these people that have been going for so long that they're doing, they're curling like, 30, 40-pound dumbbells. So you can't, it's the same thing for your podcast, for anybody who's watching entrepreneurship, anything. You can't compare yourself to other people. What you can compare is behaviors, though. So what are the behaviors of those people that you aspire to be like? Now, when it comes to your podcast, like you said, Joe Rogan was a very huge celebrity. And so he had influence. He had a following to begin with. So if it were me, would you like me to give you a little bit of advice? I am not a financial, I'm not gonna say like, oh, this is something that you have to do because I mean, it's your business, it's your thing, right? But if it were me just starting out, I would actually niche down. I would niche down instead of having instead of having a lot of everything that's out there. I would niche down to like, what is that one thing that, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be one thing. It could be maybe the top 3 things, right? Like the top 3 things. And if you want to niche down to that one, what can you be like the best at? Because right now you're going to have people that, they listen to one episode of your podcast and they're like, this is amazing. But then the next episode is about something that they don't care about. So they're like, oh, maybe this podcast isn't for me.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so
but if you can niche down and you can find like that thing that you are super passionate about, that you can have a conversation with someone about, and you can have those people coming on and being, it doesn't even have to be niched down as far as entrepreneurship. It could be, it could be like mindset, right? Like how many podcasts out there are on mindset, right? So it's not necessarily, oh, I have to do a podcast on how to teach people how to have a podcast, but it's like niche down enough that when people come onto your podcast, they know what they're going to get from it. That would be the first thing that I would recommend.
I like that advice. And now I will tell you, no one's given me that advice. I know that, like, when I thought about my podcast, I know that I could grow my podcast so much faster. I mean, without any trouble at all. If I focused on what I've done my whole life, which is which is personal training. I've had,
Okay.
in fact, I've had, I've had like Stan the Rhino Efferding, who's the world's strongest bodybuilder, on my show, and it's one of my most popular shows because he's a famous guy, and he was on my show. He's great. He's been on my show a couple of times actually, and I know that if I went down that path of getting people like Mark Bell or any number, not Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's, I'm sure he's a little bit too big for me right now, but I could probably have him on my show at some point. Bill Kazmaier, people like that who are just famous in that genre. And I know I could grow my podcast very fast if I did that. The issue is with me, like I've done it my whole life and it bores me. Like I don't like, that's not a
So
passion.
that's not the direction to
Right.
go.
So
Mhm.
and so my I love talking about everything. And so I get what you're saying. And what I'm going to do is give that a lot of thought and maybe do that for a while, narrow it
Yeah.
down to 2 or 3 topics and just stay on
Yeah.
those topics, and let's see what happens. I'd like that. Thank you.
Yep. And because when you can narrow it down to what like when people know that that's what they're going to get, at that point, it becomes easier to grow the audience.
Right.
Because now you know where those people, you can actually do, like I actually have like a target, I actually think in my book, I have a target market exercise where I actually help people with that. Let's niche down. Let's figure out, okay, who are these people? What drives them? What are their pains? What are their problems? What are they struggling with? What keeps them up at night? And on the flip side, what do they want? What do they desire? What are their dreams? Right? Because when you can speak to those two things and you can give them almost sort of a mini roadmap to get them from where they're at to where they want to be, if you can do that in a podcast episode, if you can do that over a period of time on a podcast, when you can speak to those things of a certain person, right? It's understanding who that target market is that you're going after. And then your podcast becomes that vehicle for them. Right. And it becomes a lot easier to monetize a podcast at that point as well.
So, okay. So I have one question. One question is this, and I've contemplated doing this because I do have a course that I've created. And I thought about just doing a podcast just on this topic alone. And because like you said, there's a particular audience that's going to listen to this podcast because of that topic. Mm-hmm. Can I do that and then have my fun on the side with the podcast I'm doing now and keep that as broad as I want, as long as I have another podcast that does have a niche, if you will?
So that's the great thing about being an entrepreneur, Kurt, is you get to answer that question. The advice that I do give though, is, do you have the capacity? Do you have the bandwidth to be able to do two? Right. And that's a lot of times with entrepreneurs, that's where it becomes hard for them because they're like, okay, I have a team that I'm growing over here. I have this company that I'm doing over here. Like I have all these ideas that I want to do, but it's like, do you have the capacity? Yeah. Right. And in my book, I actually talk about like people wanting to have it all, right? We want to have it all. And there's so-called gurus that are out there that will tell you, you can have it all. You can have anything you set your mind to, right? Here's the thing, you can't have it all. Like you can't be the best mom or best dad on top of being the absolute best ripped at the gym, on top of running multi-million-dollar company, on top of being the chef and being the, all of these things. Let's narrow it down. I'm going to be the best at what? I actually have 4 things. In my book, I tell people to narrow it down to 3, but because I had narrowed it down to 3 and I got those 3 streamlined, I actually have 4 things now that when I am in alignment and I feel like I'm successful when they are in alignment. It's my faith, my family, my business, and my health. Those are the 4 things I focus on every single day. And when one of them is out of alignment, that's when I know that I have gone askew, right? Like something, whether it's business ventures or, whatever it may be, you have to learn to say no to some things. Let's become really good. Let's start with one thing. When we become the best at that, if we have the capacity to bring on something else, let's do that, right? And so what are those most important things to you? Do you have the capacity? If you have the capacity, I say go for it. If you want to be able to talk about all the things and you have the capacity to have just this super niche down podcast on the side that makes you money, that brings in the cash flow, by all means, do it.
So this is the great thing about you talking to me, and I'm going to have to get your book. Seriously, because I'm one of those people, like, I want this, I want that, I can do this, I can do that, and I have all these grand plans, and then I go, oh, I really need to bring this down because I see things in like this, not just a big picture, a huge picture, where I go, this is how great it can be, and I don't put any limits on anything, and then what happens is I start walking it back and I go, okay, let's look at this realistically and go, how can I really do this and make this work? So like, even when I started my podcast, I was like, I'm looking at office spaces. And I'm like, why do I need to look at office spaces? I have a place that I can make into a studio and not pay, $1,000 a month in rent, but that's how I envision things in the beginning. And so then I have to, like, have someone like you say, okay, settle down, let's look at this.
Yeah. Yeah, we have these grand plans, right? We always have these grand plans. And so I have mentors of my own. So I co-own a coaching business for home business entrepreneurs, and we do multiple seven figures each year inside there. And we too have a mentor that helps keep us focused, right? And so we have a 1 year, a 3 year, and a 10-year goal. We've broken it down. We know what has to happen. If we're going to hit that 10-year goal, okay, where do we need to be in 3 years? What KPIs or what marks do we have to hit to make that happen in 3 years? Then we bring it down even more. 1 year. Okay, this is the KPIs that we need to hit. We bring it down into 90 days. In order for us to hit this, what has to happen in the next 90 days? When you are super clear on your vision and what that roadmap looks like, it's going to be a lot easier. And and I'll tell you right now, when you have something that brings in cash flow is king, because without money, it becomes super difficult to focus on other things. So if you can grow that cash flow to the point where, okay, I have this that's coming in, and I now have it's streamlined, it's running like clockwork. I now have the capacity to bring on something else. That's when you can bring on something else.
I think it's great that you make the point that you have mentors. And I think, one of the things I've talked about, on several episodes is that, even as a personal trainer and somebody who's been a power lifter most of my life, I have people who coach me. Like, if I'm going to do if I have a specific goal, like if I want to break the world's record in the bench press, I am going to have someone there like Stan Efferding to coach me, to help me and keep me, on track of doing so that I'm accountable to somebody, and making clear, like what you just said, making sure that it's absolutely clear what our goal is and how we're going to get there, so that you don't just kind of sporadically, do things and think that's going to get you success. So
one thing, I don't mean to interrupt you, but one thing I want to play on this is, so you've had a lot of success in the powerlifting game, right? Mm-hmm. What went into that? Think about that. And now think about your podcast, because it's all linear, right? Like what helped you be successful? The mindset, certain strategies, things, the work ethic that you went into to do that. Shift that focus to your podcast and the exact same thing is going to happen.
So when because of the places areas of my life where I've been extremely successful, it's because I loved what I was doing and it wasn't like work. And this podcast is just like that. I seriously, when I decided to quit personal training, because a real short story, I had a friend, I was watching him train a guy. He was actually training some kid who must have been, couldn't have been more than 17, 18 years old. He was training, watching him squat. And I was watching the personal trainer, my friend, and he looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world but there. And I thought, if I ever get to that point, it's time for me to go, because it's not fair to the client. It's not fair to you. Why do something if you no longer have the passion for it? Well, a couple of years ago, that happened to me where I had a person who was extremely overweight, and I've taken many people through this process, which is a long process, and there's steps through it that I know I'm going to have to take them through. And I started it, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. It hit me like I don't want to do this anymore. And so I was like, well, what am I going to do? And it was like podcasting fell in my lap. I didn't even know about podcasting really. And I was like, oh my God, that's what I want to do. This is it. And so I absolutely love what I do, and I want to continue it. I just want to be able to reach a bigger audience. And I truly think what you said about narrowing it down,
Mhm.
even though I knew that instinctively, I didn't want to be pigeonholed into just doing like, health and fitness or something like that. But
Right.
if I can narrow it down to 2 or 3 topics, I might be okay with that. So
Yep. And the other advice would be is those 2 or 3 topics, make sure that they kind of work together,
right,
right?
right.
You don't want it to be, oh, so just as an example, like politics, weightlifting, and
Baking.
baking, right? Like you want to make sure that
Right.
the listener, when they get it, they know that they're going to get one of these 3 things, and that's going to drive them to continue to listen, because they know each week they're going to get that value from experts on those 2 or 3 things that you've narrowed it down to. So
I will do that. Thank you. That, I mean, again, see, this is why I was so excited to have you on the show today. So, all right. So,
so Kurt, I like to tell people, whether you're religious or not, right? Call it God, the universe, whatever floats your boat there, everything happens for a reason, right? And so, and I mean, just like when you were in that weight room and you were personal training and you're just like, this is not it. And then all of a sudden casting fell into your lap. That's not a coincidence.
right. I agree.
Right. And just like having me here, when you're like, okay, how am I going to grow this? How am I going to reach a bigger audience? It's never a coincidence. It's divinely inspired. I like to say, call it fate, call it whatever you want. It always happens for a reason.
In fact, I just got a great idea, and I'll tell you after the show what it is, because I'm not sure it's going to go in that direction, but I would really enjoy that. Anyway, so let's talk about. So you realized that
Yep.
That having a brick and mortar business is, especially with a service, is really limiting in with that environment, because as you said, when it's booming, it's booming. When it's not, neither are you. And so you got into the digital world, into online business. And and even with that, you found difficulties, because like with me, it's not just like paste and cut going, here's the roadmap, you take this and you go to success. There really isn't anything out there until your book. So
Right.
so um so you talk about putting an hour a day in. So how do you get like an hour? Like if I spent 1 hour a day on my podcast and doing something, do I have to do in that hour?
Perfect. That's a great question. So I like to tell, like when I'm teaching my students, when I'm working with clients, when I'm working with teammates, it's all about, like, there's a myth out there that you can manage time. You can't manage time. Time is going to tick by. We all have 24 hours in a day. Time cannot be managed. However, what we can manage is our priorities and understanding what are the most effective things that I need to be focusing on in order for this to grow. So when it comes to entrepreneurship and growing a business of any sorts, doesn't matter what type of business, any business, I like to narrow it down to 3 things. What are the 3 things? And I break them down into 20-minute increments. And the reason I do this is because a lot of people that I work with, they're working full time. They're wanting to, get this side gig up and running. Right. So where do I focus my time to get me out of my 9 to 5, right? I only have an hour a day, right? How am I going to make this work? So the first 20-minute time block, and think about your day. Like if you do work a 9 to 5, maybe it's waking up 20 minutes earlier so that you can get your first 20-minute increment done. Maybe it's on your lunch shift, on your lunch break during work, as you're shoving food in your face, you're getting your next 20 minutes done. And then the next 20 minutes is, when you get home from work or right before bed, right? It's just, It could be maybe you just have a solid hour after you get home from work and you're going to get all three things done in that solid hour, right? So there's no right or wrong to where you put these pieces in, but when you can think of it in a 20-minute increment, 20 minutes, you can find 20 minutes somewhere, right? So the first 20 minutes, we're going to be spending growing that audience like we've been talking, like we just talked about, where we're going to identify, okay, who is our target market? Who is that audience that I'm trying to reach? We're going to figure out where they hang out. So once you go through, I have a target market exercise that people can go through inside my book. It's narrowing down and it's like, okay, here's the perfect person that would buy my product or buy my service or join my opportunity or whatever that may be. It's the pains, the struggles, it's identifying those things and demographics. Where do they hang out? What do they like to listen to? If you're on social media and you're wanting to grow on social media, what forums are they in? What gurus do they follow? What podcasts do they listen to? What books do they read? And you're going to have to do some research and development to figure out where these people are at, right? And then it's connecting with those people every day. So if there's two ways that you can do it organically, meaning that your manpower, you're going in, you're using free strategies, right? You're going in, you're finding these people, or you can use paid strategies. Paid strategies, if you need to make sure that if you're going to use a paid strategy, you understand how that strategy works so that you're not just dumping money into the toilet, right? You want to make sure that you're actually getting high quality people that you're connecting with. But once you understand that, 20 minutes a day, you're focusing on the things for your business that are going to get new eyes on your offers, new people, new connections. The new blood is the lifeblood of your business. If you are not continuing to have new people seeing what you're up to every single day, you're stuck. So the next 20 minutes now is, how do we build some influence? How do we engage with these people every single day so that we're building know, like, and trust? So for in the home business space, a lot of times it's Facebook Lives. Your podcast that you do, this in itself can actually fall into that because it's value that you provide, right? It's how can I provide value to people so that they're getting to know, like, and trust me, right? If we can focus on building some know, like, and trust before hitting people with buy my stuff, you're going to, if you think, okay, I've got the right people, right? I'm growing an audience of the right people in those first 20 minutes. Now I'm engaging to build some influence. People like me. They're seeking me out. They're wanting to see what I'm up to. When it comes time to promote, it's a lot easier. And that's the third thing that you focus on is however your business model works, where you are actually closing clients, closing people, having people buy. If you're not having those conversations or working on the things every day that creates that and makes that happen, again, you're stuck. So it's making sure that those three things, growing that audience, engaging with that audience, and promoting to that audience, are happening synergistically every single day. So when you think, okay, I just have to focus on these three things every single day, at that point, you can then evaluate what's working, what's not. If leads aren't coming in, okay, that means that I'm not growing effectively. I'm not connecting with people effectively. If maybe you're growing and you're doing all of the value, but people still aren't buying. Okay, maybe there's something off in my process of getting people to buy. Maybe that potentially I'm not giving enough value for people to really see me as that person that can help them in this particular niche, right? So it's just understanding, okay, and I can't break this down for anybody. They have to break it down themselves, and I help them in the book, but it's, what are those things that I'm going to focus on every single day to grow? What are those things that I'm going to focus on every single day to engage? And what are those things that I'm going to focus on every single day to promote? And how can I make sure that this is working synergistically? And it's all through evaluation by asking what's working, what's not, what's one thing I might tweak or do differently so that I'm getting closer to that desired result that I want.
That is amazing advice. I was just taking notes. I was like, I got to remember this. Of course, I have the luxury of going back over this and listening to it again, which I'm sure you've run into people, and I'm sure there are going to be people out in the audience who listen to this, and one of the things that I know I've dealt with throughout my life, and had a struggle to overcome, and I've overcome it to a certain extent, but not to my full potential. And that is that when I was growing up, we were poor. And so I had a father who's like, money doesn't grow on trees, sort of thing. And of course, growing up in a religious, background as well, sometimes religion, like the Bible tells you that, a rich man getting through the eye of a needle will be easier than getting to heaven, or whatever it is. Or I forget what this phrase is. I'm sorry, you probably know. I don't. But anyway, they're saying it's going to be hard for a rich man to get to heaven. That money is a sin or whatever. When
Mhm.
when you find people like that, how do you help them get past that mindset?
That is like, you're speaking my language, right? I actually have a full chapter in my book where I talk about this. Being successful isn't a sin. And you hit the nail right on the head with that. Is a lot of people, because of how they're brought up, they try to do something for themselves, like create and be that entrepreneur. They have that entrepreneur spirit. They want, maybe it is, I want to make that extra money so that I can be home with my kids, right? And because of how their brain has been wired when it comes to money, they stay stuck. So with those people, because I grew up in a religious household, I was taught differently around money. Thank heavens I was taught differently. But because I was taught differently around money, and I looked at a lot of people and how they were taught, because I live in a very religious state, right?
Right.
A lot of people were like that. I remember being in church when people just saying, be content, right? Like, or be happy with what you have and what you've been blessed with. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, I can be grateful for what I have now, but I do not have to be content. Since when
Agreed.
did money become a bad thing, right? And a lot of people that are like, oh, money isn't bad, the love of money is bad. I'm here to tell you that the people who love money are the ones that give a lot. I'm not going to say all, because there are some people that are out there that, do not use money for good. But if you are a good person at heart, do you think that money will necessarily change that? I don't think so. Not when you go
Yeah.
in with the intention of giving back and being that person. You know, did you know that it only costs $10,000 to build a well in Africa? $10,000 will build a well that will give clean water to an entire tribe and village of people. $10,000 is all.
Wow.
When you take a look at all of like when there's natural disasters and things that happen, it is money that creates the relief for people,
Right.
right? There's somebody out there that's, I'm so passionate about fighting against child and human trafficking. It takes money for that to happen, right? To be able to save people that are in that situation. It takes money for any of that. Do you really think that God wants you to be poor? If you're poor, really, you can only bless and help the people that are right in front of you, the people with your own two hands, right? And not to say that that's a bad thing, because it will create a ripple effect. You do what you can. However, if you have money where you're able to donate to organizations and charities and, feeding homeless and helping end poverty, like different things like that, like it's money that creates that. And if you're a religious person, I'm here to tell you that the love of money is not bad. God doesn't just say, oh, you love money, you're going to hell. Absolutely not. What do you do with that money? I'm here to tell you that I absolutely love making money. I love seeing my bank account grow, because that is an impact from helping people. And then I take a chunk of that money and I go and I donate. Actually, my husband and I, we made a vow, whatever you want to call it, an agreement. It was the year of 2016. It was the year of 2016. We made the decision that 10% of everything that we made, we were going to give back in some way. And we have been so blessed because of that. And we have blessed many people. I don't say that to boast or to brag, but you think about 10% of millions of dollars that have been earned. We have helped so many people. And I take pride in that, right? I take pride that my money has gone to help people. It's gone to boost humanity. It's gone to, that's what it's gone towards. Things that are near and dear to my heart, right? That I know that because I've donated to that, the world is a better place.
I think part of the issue with that is that people like you don't get enough credit for what you do because you don't brag about it, and because you do it without people knowing what you're doing. And unfortunately, the ones who do get, who are put in the spotlight are these charlatans, if you will, who, talk about the prosperity faith or whatever, and that, that God wants you to be rich. And maybe he does. But when you become rich and then you start putting down poor people, you shouldn't have to put down poor people to build yourself up. And that's what they do. They're going, well, I shouldn't have to help them. They should help themselves. I shouldn't have to pay for this or pay for that. They should be able to take care of themselves. I looked at myself up by my bootstraps. Why can't they do it? And those are the people that you see. And these are supposed Christians. And I go, that's not the Christian thing to do. From my understanding, that's not what Christ would have done.
Well,
so
that's when pride gets in the way, and you got to keep your pride in check, right? With anything, you've got to keep your pride in check. And I'm here to tell you that just as quick as God can bless you, he can take it away. And so be a good steward of money, and God will continue to bless you with more money.
And one of the other things I tell people, because they go, well, you'll see certain people who act, like those people that you said that aren't good stewards of money, and even the way they teach about getting money and making money is so slimy. It really is. Like, you almost feel like you're talking to a used car salesman who would sell his mother a lemon to make a buck, and so there are some of these so-called gurus out there, these money-making gurus, and they don't teach about what you teach about, which is having a balance between life and work. Mm-hmm. And what their whole thing is, like, I laugh because I had a friend who, he would get on Facebook and he said, if you're not a millionaire, then you shouldn't be taking weekends off. And I go, that's so ridiculous. I mean, there's no balance. But, the thing is he never believed that because he never followed, because then you'd see him out with his family at the fair or something on the weekend. I go, oh, you must be a millionaire now. Really believe, but he was regurgitating the nonsense that he heard from these supposed gurus who would say, oh, making money is the most important thing and everything else has to wait. And unfortunately, a lot of people buy into that. And so
they do. Mm-hmm. And I'm here to tell you that there are a million ways to make money. Like, there are ways to make money that are even easier than how I teach people to make money, right? So it's about finding a mentor, that person that you want to follow, whose strategies that they teach are in alignment with who you are. And I'm here to tell you right now, like, I attract a lot of women that want more out of life, right? They're a woman, they're entrepreneurs. I do attract a lot of men too, but really, like, I hone in on that woman because I am a woman, right? I can teach from experience of being that woman, being that mom. And so many times when I first got started in network marketing and growing a business and doing all of that, I was kind of preached by a lot of those people that it's like, 100% needs to go into the business, sacrifice everything now so you can have everything later. That was what I was told a lot. And I quickly realized that I was listening to the wrong mentors, because I could go out and I could sacrifice the next 5 years to get everything that I want. But 5 years from now, my 8-year-old's a teenager, right? Like, I've missed out on those crucial, important moments. He now hates me, right? Because I missed out on that, because now I'm not that person that he can turn to because I was always so focused in my business, right? It is possible to build a thriving, successful business and have solid, deep, meaningful relationships with those people that you love. It is absolutely possible. Does it mean that you're going to have $1 million in your bank account a year from now? Probably not, right? With what I teach, you might not be a millionaire next year. However, if you give yourself a year plan and a 5-year plan, and you're going to have the income that you want, and you won't have sacrificed the things that matter most to you to get there.
So, I agree with you 100%, at 100%. And I'm so glad that you said that, because again, I think so many people are misled because they want to be successful, and that they think that what these people are teaching, that if they do exactly what they tell them to do, then they're going to get there. And I'm like, most of these so-called millionaire makers don't have one person they ever made a millionaire except themselves. That's about it. And I
can tell you right now, I know a lot of millionaires that live paycheck to paycheck. Like,
oh yeah.
Like they are in so much debt because they weren't good stewards of their money, right? And so it's just finding that person, and it's asking yourself, is that person that I'm following, the advice that I'm getting, take a look at their life. Do they have the lifestyle that you want? Do they have the type of relationships? Like, do they have like the marriage that you want? Right. Like,
right.
And you don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but by looking at social media, by seeing how they treat each other on Zoom calls or whatever that may be, is that the kind of life that you want? And if you can answer yes, then that's probably a person you want to follow. If you can't answer yes, you might want to, evaluate, okay, there might be pieces of what this person is telling me that is really good, and I'm going to take those and run with them. But maybe some of the other stuff that they're telling me isn't for me. Right. I'm going to find that strategy that's in alignment with who I am.
And one of the things I think it's important that people understand, because you'll hear some people say, oh, well, ever since he became rich, money's changed him. And I said, money doesn't change a person. It just shows who that person really was, and now they get to be, if they're nice and kind, they're going to be even nicer and kinder when they have more money. Like they're going to, like you said, they'll be donating to people and helping people with that money and making the world a better place. If they were, oh, you're a Mormon, I can't say certain words.
You use whatever words you want.
If they were a jerk, if they were a jerk, they're just going to be a bigger jerk when they have money, and that's what I found. It doesn't change who you are. Just, it just increases that, tenfold or more. And unfortunately for those jerks, they get to be bigger jerks, and,
we'll call them ass hats. We'll call them what, right?
Exactly. What was the word you guys used out there for the longest time? Oh, it skips me, because the missionaries used to use it all the time. Flipping. Yeah, that's what it was.
Flipping, yeah, gosh, dang it. You hear a lot of that in Utah.
Flipping jerks.
That is one thing that I'm probably going to get to the pearly gates on the other side. He's like, you were a potty mouth. Like, like my kids are at school saying words and I'm getting calls and they're all like, he said this today. And I'm like, oh, I wonder where he heard that. Like, oh, what have you been watching on TV? You did not hear that from your mother.
Well, Cari, I'm going to tell you, I really enjoyed our conversation. There was so much great information there. So I want you to tell people where they can find you, how they can find your book.
Yes.
And where they can purchase it, and also get in touch with you if they want to learn more.
Yeah, so you can go to yougotThisGirlBook.com, yougotThisGirlBook.com. And you can actually, that's the best place to get a hold of me. I have contact information in there. So yougotThisGirlBook.com to connect more, to get the book, to, even continue this conversation. So
right. And all your social media, like your Facebook, Instagram.
I'm on all most of the social media platforms. On my Facebook for business page, it's actually my husband and I that we build our business together. So it's Whit and Cari Higham, WHIT and Cari Higham, and on TikTok as well. We've actually started venturing into TikTok and doing some TikTok. It's actually been really fun. I have really loved TikTok. We had a video that actually went viral the other day. It gave people a lot of laugh. We're very sexually driven, and so that TikTok tended to just go, oh yeah, that's my husband, that's my husband. So
I don't think people know that about Mormons, that they're sexually driven, because the Mormons
multiply and replenish the
right,
earth.
exactly. They have a lot of kids.
I'll tell you what, we're a little more sexually driven than most. I'm pretty happy with my 3 kids. I have no intention of.
No, if you're looking for a religion, that would be the one I'd be looking for, the one that's sexually driven.
Whoa, this is taking a spiral down.
Right, I know. I was like, we better put a stop to this now. But listen, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. It was a lot of fun. I knew it was going to be when I talked to you before the show. And you're just a great person and a great personality, and so much seriously great advice. And I really appreciate the advice you gave me, because now my head's starting to run with all these ideas just because of the advice you gave me, and I appreciate it greatly. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And hopefully, your listeners, people that are listening in, they can take just that one thing that's going to propel them forward. So thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Well, folks, that's going to be our show for today. Thanks for joining us. Listen, go to her website, which is, again, it's hold on. You've got this girl book.com, and go check her out. Go get her book. I'm going to get her book, and I don't buy books, but I do. But if I bought one from every guest I had, I'd go broke. So, but right. This one, I really like. In fact, the first chapter was what got me. The title of your first chapter, which was being successful, or being
successful is a choice.
Yes. And I said, wow, as simple as that phrase was, it was powerful, because you're absolutely right. It's a choice, like everything else. And we can either choose to be poor, or we can choose to be wealthy. I want to be wealthy. So
I agree with you on that.
Right. All right, folks. Well, thanks again. And until next time, remember, love yourself so you can love others. Take care and be safe. Bye.